Welcome everyone to our first panel of the day. We have an exciting panel lined up right now. It's called Charting Your Path, Career Advice from Real Women in Tech panel. And I'm excited to introduce three real women. We'll be getting career advice from these fabulous women who are working in tech today. And these three panelists join us today from Technovation's corporate partners. They're going to be sharing tips with us on finding a job in tech, on skills to develop, and much more. All of the questions that they are going to be answering have been submitted to us from our amazing alumni who are curious about all sorts of things. And I will be dropping off. My name is Rebecca. I oversee Technovation's programs. And our moderator for this panel is going to be Catalina Arrey who is a Technovation alumna from Chile, who is currently studying telematics civil engineering, and she continues to be an activist for women's rights in STEM. Before I pass it over to Catalina, I'm going to do a quick introduction. We have three panelists joining us today. We have Lola Oyelayo-Pearson, who is Shopify's Director of User Experience, who is joining us from Canada. We have Colleen Nolan, a Software Engineering Manager at FactSet, who is joining us from the Northeast US. And we have Kay Malcolm, who is a Senior Director for Database Product Management at Oracle, who is joining us from the Southeast US. And please submit any other questions into the chat box, where we will have Mackenzie from Technovation who will be monitoring the chat box for any of your questions. We do have a packed schedule full of questions that you already submitted, but if you have amazing questions, we might have a couple minutes at the end to address them. We'll see. But I am so excited to pass it off to Catalina to begin.
Thank you, Rebecca. First of all, I want to say I'm so excited to be here and to get to ask these wonderful women about tech and about their careers. So to begin, I like to invite them all to present up himself so our listeners can get to know each other more. I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Lola?
Thank you, Catalina. Hi, everybody. Yes, as Rebecca said, I am one of the directors of user experience at Shopify. I currently oversee our money products, so our financial services that we offer to entrepreneurs as part of the Shopify product. I moved to Canada from the UK, so you can probably hear from my accent, I don't sound Canadian. I moved to Canada from the UK last year, and my career has been a mix of working in-house, as we say, at product companies, and also in agency where you take on more of a consultancy role, and also in startups. So I had a really fun time working at a blockchain startup a few years ago. My educational background, I did a master's in human-computer interaction with ergonomics, can never forget the ergonomics bit, a few years ago at University College London, and a degree in interactive systems engineering. I think that's something I share with the panelists. We all did engineering degrees for some reason. And yeah, I've had a full career with many pivots along the way. So I look forward to sharing some of those nuggets and stories with the audience today.
I love it. I don't know if Colleen wants to continue.
Yeah, hi, I'm Colleen Nolan. I'm a software engineering manager at FactSet. I manage a team that works on both application and services. I graduated from University of Maryland with a degree in math and a minor in computer science in 2015, and I started at FactSet right after that. So I've been working at FactSet more or less on the same team, kind of as it's evolved around me for the last 6 years. Originally, I started as like an individual contributor and a software developer, but now I manage a team of engineers as well. I'm really excited to be here on this panel today because I just think, having listened to the other women here and giving their advice just before, I really would have benefited from talking to them and hearing this advice before I started my career.
I believe it's going to be a wonderful experience. And last but not least, Kay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kay Malcolm. I am a Senior Director of Product Management at Oracle. I also graduated from University of Maryland. Go Terps! I had a degree in electrical engineering. I started my career out at the National Security Agency and then went on to Accenture. So, I've kind of worked in different areas and in industries. I've actually been at Oracle for 15 years. I came over from a utility as a DBA and then went into sales engineering. And so did a lot of work working with really large customers, solving their business problems. Now I am a product manager and I lead a team of database experts. And what we do, we drive strategy around Oracle's database products. So we're the face, if you will, of the database development organization. Fun fact, last year, in June. So we just celebrated our 1-year birthday. Myself and 3 other developer friends who didn't work for me at that time, now they do. We wrote and authored an app called Oracle Live Labs. If you go into Google and you search Live Labs, you can see it. That's my app. We should be hitting about 1 million views in the next 1 or 2 weeks. We're hovering around 900,000. And what it does is it helps people who are new to Oracle's cloud for free get experience. We tell them how to build applications, how to create chatbots, how to run database for free, how to have servers for free. At Oracle, I'm also a mentor, diversity ambassador. I do lots of speeches. My passion is women in STEM and putting more female faces in male spaces. Thanks for having me.
Wow, I believe each of you can make us learn so much about women in tech, and I think three of you can make us learn a lot of information, a lot of how to be part of this world. So I want to continue asking you, how did you find your first job in the industry you want to work on? Maybe we can start with Colleen.
Yeah, so I need to start off by being honest and letting everyone know that I didn't really know what industry I wanted to work in for my first job. Like I said, got a degree in math and computer science, which is very vague, right? Like there's not really a set career path if you did that. I felt, Kay, when you were talking about working for the NSA, I always kind of suspected I might end up there, especially like going to school in Maryland. That's what a lot of us did.
Yeah.
That's what we did. So I actually really am kind of surprised at where I ultimately ended up. But so I ended up finding my first job at the University of Maryland Computer Science Career Fair. So earlier that week, I'd walked around our regular career fair with a bunch of resumes, chatted with a bunch of people. And then later I printed out maybe like 30 resumes and didn't really expect to get much traction with them. And I walked around the computer science career fair. I chatted with a bunch of companies. I hit it off with a couple of them. And I actually went on to do more interviews as a result of that comp sci career fair than I did at the regular one, which I guess I'm just mentioning because I felt with like only a minor in computer science that no one in comp sci field would want me. And I hardly thought I belonged at that career fair. So don't be afraid to kind of put yourself out there and go somewhere where you don't necessarily think you belong. But anyways, yeah, I went on to do a couple of interviews. I got an offer from FactSet, and that's how I ended up where I am today.
It's an amazing story. I really like it. To continue, Lola, can tell us something more?
Yeah, similar to Colleen, I graduated and I was just like, okay, time to get paid. I need money. I need a job. I didn't have a fixed view of where I needed to work. I applied to every graduate program I could find. I was just like, get me paid, get me money, get me a job. Probably not a great thing. One fun thing that I learned is it took me a lot of applications before I asked for help with writing my CV. And it was the first lesson. And I think for women, we're really bad at sharing and saying, this is what I'm good at and this is how good I am. So I had worked throughout my entire degrees. I had tons of experience. I just didn't think I had any experience because it wasn't graduate experience. And so I needed help to actually rewrite my CV. When I did, the very first job I applied to after I had my CV rewritten, I got. Fun. But that was a really great role because it was basically a business graduate. It was a generic, sort of like a PA with a degree, I would say, in an engineering company. Again, engineering companies hire people who have engineering degrees. It was kind of like 1 + 1 = 2. But it did give me an opportunity to try lots of things because it was a scheme that allowed me to spend some time in this job and spend some time in that job and do lots of different things that allowed me to think about what I liked. And it was through that I started navigating my way towards design and user experience because I found it to be a passion area and that I loved tech and I loved geeking out on like what was possible with tech. And so my advice is to kind of persevere, but also really start trying things. Like there is no way when I first graduated or was studying in my life that I had any idea I would be where I am now. I had no concept of what user experience as a profession was, or even some of the jobs I've done. I genuinely couldn't have projected them. So I didn't have this fixed mindset of I'm going to graduate and I'm going to be an X, but I did get lots of really good advice to follow my passions, follow my interests. And I used that to sort of navigate my way through the opportunities I was given, where I would, the stuff I enjoyed more, I worked harder at, and it seemed to provide me with more opportunities career-wise. So going in a more fluid way rather than having like I must be X in this industry, in this kind of job title, just kind of going with where I could get an opportunity and then using that opportunity to navigate my interests and then using that to kind of improve my career along is sort of what I did. And that's how I ended up where I am now.
Yes, I agree. We have to be in some job we feel comfortable with. And Kay, what do you want to say about how you find your job or what you want to work on?
So I'm going to be the one. I didn't have a great early career. I really floundered. So I was at the National Security Agency, but like you couldn't bring your cell phone in, and there were all these restrictions, and it was kind of expected. Colleen kind of mentioned that, and I was like, okay, I feel like I want to do something else. I went to one of those job fairs. Colleen, we probably went to the same one. And there was this company at that time was Anderson Consulting, and then later became Accenture, and they were going to hire 4 people from University of Maryland. They had 500 applicants, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to try. I didn't even really have a suit that fit. Lola, I didn't work on my resume. I just was like, I'm going to just fling myself at it and see what happens. I got the job and I was like, life is like, I'm doing good. I am awesome. Not. After that, like my career just went, it sort of did this for about, I want to say 4 or 5 years. I must have had a new job every 9 months. I started out in consulting, traveling every week, bounced around. I had some like really bad experiences. And I was talking to my mom today and I reminded her of one, and she was like, did that really happen? I'm like, Mom, you were right there. And she's like, oh, I forgot. And the thing about that is, because, when I do these talks and I talk to women and I have Mentor Fridays, what I talk about is no one prepares you for the fact that when you come out, life can be tough. And rather than let these experiences define me, right? Each one, I'm like, okay, I was supposed to learn something from that. And it was one of those particularly bad experiences. And I mean, really bad. The police were called and they came to arrest me. I was a DBA. They thought that my owner of the company was gambling the money that people were paying for the product, our service. He was spending it in Vegas, and he took the rest of the company out and said, I'm going to blame Kay. I'm going to say that she changed the passwords. She's a Black girl. The police will believe it. And one of my coworkers called me and said, run out the side door. I was 24 when that happened. Had that not happened, I would never have been introduced to Oracle. That's literally how I got introduced to Oracle. I read the manual cover to cover, figured it out, and literally I'm sitting here. I think we're number 82 on the Fortune 100, and I'm leading a team. And it was out of not successes that I got here, but out of failures that are part of my story, but they are not my story.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Lola,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that is such an inspirational point to make, and something that, if I think back to the version of me that was graduating, or the version of any of us that's graduating, you assume that from this point on, life is a staircase that only goes up, right? And so every job and every step, and you're like, oh yeah, there'll be bad times, but you don't think they're ever going to be that bad. And I think, that kind of story illustrates that you can overcome a lot of things. And it's important to look for the story in every experience that you have, because it's also part of your job. It's also part of your professional story. It's the resilience as a leader to understand that, like, things will go wrong. How do you handle them? How do you take a breath? How do you get your composure? How do you lead other people through that? How do you help somebody who might be a young person in a difficult scenario, similar to you? Like, I super inspired by that. Okay. And like, it's a big lesson I've learned in my life, without anything anywhere near as dramatic as that, but certainly as there have been situations that have felt as, almost catastrophic in my life. And when I look back on them now, every single one was such a critical learning point for becoming the person I am today, personally and professionally.
Agreed.
I'm still in shock. I mean, as a college student, I believe maybe life would be like this, but it's not. And I believe alumni students that are watching us maybe feel the same way. And right now, one of the most important things that is happening is COVID, and how to find new opportunities and new job researches and job searches more than anything else. So it might be COVID now, or a recession in other times, to find a job or find opportunities in internships. So how do you recommend Technovation alumni overcome internship and this job research challenges related to this COVID today? Colleen, you can say something?
Yeah. So I talked a lot about going to career fairs and walking around and talking to a bunch of people and giving them your resume. And you can't really do that today. But I really still think that making a personal connection and kind of talking to someone one-on-one is really the best way to kind of get a foot in the door. So I have some tips. Obviously, I didn't get my job during COVID, so these are just my opinions more as like a hiring manager during COVID. So use your existing network. If you have friends or connections in the industry who are already working, see if they can give you a referral. Or, if their company's not hiring, they might have a friend who's working somewhere else who can give you a referral. Submitting your resume online is fine. And, you might get a couple of callbacks that way. But really submitting your resume through someone who can kind of pass it on directly helps you skip a step. And you can skip the resume screen altogether a lot of times. I also would recommend, like, if we're talking about coming out of college, look for groups that are organizing network events at your school. So at University of Maryland, we had Women in Computing. I've gone and I've done talks with them, again, not in person during COVID times. They also had, University of Maryland had a startup shell that I went and I did a talk at. Then I've gone to RIT, Women in Tech. And why I'm recommending these groups rather than a career fair is it's smaller and more focused groups. And so when I go there, I'm representing a single company, and there usually is like, I don't think I've ever talked to more than like 20 or 30 people at one of those more focused events. But at a career fair, I'm talking to hundreds of people on a single time. And especially in a virtual world, that can be kind of exhausting and draining. So go for a more focused event. Try to make a one-on-one connection with someone. Like I said, when I went to the career fair, I don't know, I brought the same resume to everyone. But the companies that I seemed to get a call back for were the ones where I like really hit it off with the recruiter. So chat a little bit, show your personality. You don't have to be so kind of like corporatized, I guess is how I would describe it, right? Like have fun, be funny, try to make a connection with these people. And anytime you go to any networking event, always bring your resume.
Uh-oh, Catalina, we can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. Thank you. I was saying that connection is very important and it's like the base of all. And Kay, do you want to say something more?
Yeah, I want to piggyback, Colleen. I really like what you said about the connection. So the personal connection, same thing, right? As a hiring manager, what I'm looking for aren't, and I mean, it's what I talk about, right? You don't have to be so. What I always say is, don't try to outmen the men, right? Be your authentic and in whatever that is, right? Yours, so what? So when trying to look for a job, I came out, I'm aging myself, but I don't look this old. I came out Y2K, so I'm a little bit older than Colleen and Lola. It kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. I'm okay. And there, right after Y2K, all of the jobs, right, they were going away because this big project that, the 1999 to 2000, it didn't exist, and we were in the middle of a recession. But in COVID, it's a tough time. The thing is, these companies are moving to virtual work. So, if you look at it as, now I can't go into an office, flip that on its axis. It's not, I can't go into an office. You literally can go to an office now anywhere in the world. And that remote work it's out there for the taking. So what Colleen said, I agree. Join these groups because companies are having to find people, and the pool it's tough, right? It's tough at Oracle for us to find candidates. And so we're going to all of these different areas and locations because people can work anywhere, right? And so on the personal side, you're thinking, I don't have as much opportunity, but you have tremendous opportunity on the company side. Because you have the opportunity to work anywhere, we've got to chase you a little bit more. And so allow yourself to be caught.
Yes, it's very important that I feel we have to realize that the world is changing, the system is changing, and we have to adapt to it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I don't know, find some other ways to make us in the spot. So, this is an interesting question. So, what is one skill you use in the workplace every day that you recommend young women learn? And are there any technical skills you have had learned for your current or past roles? I think Lola maybe could start.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, projecting into this, I love that comment you made, Kay, about like don't outmen the men. The number one skill that I bring to work every single day is how to ask good questions. And I think there's an energy sometimes that comes with being the kind of like the ego in the room, the one who knows all the answers, the one who struts and it's like, right, this is what we're going to do. Everybody point in that direction. It's a masculine energy. It doesn't just come from men, but it is a very macho sense of I've got this. And when you're starting work, that can be a very intimidating energy to confront because you feel like you don't know anything and you're the junior one in the room. I want to flip that. The skill today, 20 years into my career, in every workplace I've ever worked in, the best skill I have is asking questions because assumptions have been made. And sometimes it's unclear that two people in the room have different assumptions. And it's not until a very clear question is asked that everyone realizes, oh, we don't actually know the answer to this question, or we thought different things and now we need to come back and reset some foundations. There is a confidence thing of never feeling like a question is too silly. And when I have a lot of new people on my team, I always say to them, hey, I need your newness for as long as possible. I need you to come to your meetings with all of those newbie questions, because we've forgotten how to ask those questions. We think we know, and actually your energy is going to help us reset the baseline again. So questions, asking good questions, asking with humility, making sure you're listening. So the question you're asking is actually relevant to the thing that's being discussed. So you're not just waiting to speak, you're actually hearing and trying to understand. I take notes as a way of helping me formulate my questions, but I recognize that even as a leader, the best thing I can do for my team is ask them questions. And in terms of a technical skill that was very important to me in my career, it's how to run a workshop. Now, to a lot of people, a workshop feels like a meeting, but it is not. A meeting says a group of people want to have a discussion about an agenda. Here's a list of topics to discuss, literally. A workshop is we need to solve a problem. So here are specific activities that are organized to help us think about the problem and solve the problem. That means you've got to plan the time. You've got to think how many people are going to be in the workshop. What types of activities do I want them to do? Depending on who you bring to the workshop, you have to think about how do I encourage them to try things they're not comfortable with. So I am now very good at getting deep back-end engineers who believe their job is just to code to stick people on a piece of paper, because I know how to, we do an exercise where I give everybody the sketch alphabet. It's basically a box, a circle, a triangle, a straight line, a squiggly line, and an angled line. And I said, everybody in this session is going to sketch like this. That means whether you're an amazing illustrator or foundations, all of our sketches are going to look the same. And suddenly somebody's no longer uncomfortable to put their ideas on paper. So I've had to learn technically how to create activities. And I now have a backlog of tell me what outcome you want, and here's a bunch of different workshop activities that we can put together to get people to warm up, get to know each other, tackle a difficult subject, work through a strategic problem, wrap up at the end of the day. It's a great skill to have. It's definitely one that you have to adapt in virtual environments. So thinking about in-person versus virtual workshops, they have to be different. But it's something, again, I still rely on, and something that I think no matter your craft area, learning how to put together a really great workshop is a great skill to have.
I love it. I feel I understand the differences between a meet and a workshop. And Colleen, what would you like to say?
So my answer is actually pretty generic, but I really recommend everyone learn how to problem solve. Problem solving is critical for, most roles in tech and business in general, but also really useful no matter what you choose to do. So I really recommend getting good at recognizing when there's a problem and start trying to build the confidence to do something about it. People tend to see a problem and think oh, that's my manager's job, or that's a different department's role to fix, or it's above my pay grade, so I don't need to do anything about it. But actually, you can do something about a lot of different problems. And because Kay was really vulnerable earlier and shared a story, I think I'll share one as well. So
yes, Colleen, be vulnerable.
When I first started at FactSet, I was new in the corporate world, and there was one man that I worked with who kind of would message me outside of work hours on Facebook. He would show up where I was hanging out with my friends. It really gave me very bad vibes, and I had a very hard time telling him to back off. And he would message me and say hey, this is outside of work, so you can't bring this to HR. And being a new, young, fresh college hire, I didn't know any better. And I was like, all right, he's right. And so it took me months to really tell him, hey, back off, this isn't cool. And I never went through HR, which is absolutely what I should have done. A couple of years later, which I know this is kind of depressing that it took me that long to do something about it. One of my neighbors had said she also worked with me, because that's an important clarification. She had gone through a really similar situation with a completely different engineer and also did the same thing as me because she just didn't know. And it kind of made us get to thinking well, it sounds like we need to change the training for new hires coming through, right? we had a mutual respect training, which basically just teaches you like what's acceptable in the workplace and what's not. And we went through and we rewrote the slides to kind of cover the situations that we felt that new engineers were more likely to face. And then it ended up getting adopted into the workplace. Like, so anyone engineer who started after that went through that training, and no one could get through that weird side door of like, yeah, I'm sexually harassing you, but it's in your own time. So you can't like report it to the workplace. And that was really empowering for me to realize that like, okay, well, I don't work in HR, but I can make a difference for the training where other engineers coming through this program. And in terms of technical skills, like what a left turn we're about to take. But in terms of my technical skills that I've built, like I said, I had a degree in math. I had a very basic knowledge with computer science. So I actually had to learn almost all of my technical skills on the job. On top of the fact that I didn't quite complete a full degree in comp sci, the field that I ended up working in. Tech is constantly changing. So even the technologies we were using at FactSet that I started with, we're not using anymore. So that's part of what makes it really fun, is being able to learn and pick up on new skills constantly. And so, yeah, that's those are all of the skills is what I learned.
Wow, Colleen. Yes, that was fantastic.
Yeah, I really we need to talk more about this other side of the coin. We have to learn about this and not make like we're blind. To continue, I want to ask if an alumna want to change careers or find a job in a different industry they didn't study. How would you recommend she sell the skills she has? Maybe we can start with Kay.
So I want to piggyback on something, Lola. There was a thing that you said earlier about that macho energy, and that we tend not to sell ourselves. I did switch industries. I was electrical engineering and then did this configuration management job. I don't even actually know what that is today. And to go into Oracle, I thought, I don't know anything, right? So I can't really offer anything in this industry. So the thing that I would say is, Colleen mentioned this a little bit as well. Make sure that you are doing the work. So I went to Barnes and Nobles. I don't even know if they have Barnes and Nobles now. And that was when people used books to get certifications. I actually have one a little bit off camera. And I was like, I'm going to get a certification. So I read it because I wanted to feel comfortable in those spaces, that at least I understood the technology. But what sold me was I didn't have that macho energy. I brought a different, a new energy in. And were there people who were more qualified, had more years, right? Because remember, I had 0 years. There were, but when I was doing the interview with my, the guy who became my boss, I did what Lola did. I asked questions. Tell me about yourself, right? Tell me about your family. We found out that we lived 2 neighborhoods away from each other. People make emotional decisions. You don't go and buy a car because you are speaking to the logically best salesman or the person who can tell you, I don't know car stuff, mileage, engine revs, whatever, that stuff. That's not who you buy from. You buy from the person that you're connected to. And so if you're trying to switch careers, right, you want to make sure that you do the work. If there are certifications out there, if there is free material, take advantage of it. Do the work, do your homework. But then also when you get there, do what Lola said. Make a personal connection. Talk to them. Get to know them and open yourself up. Be vulnerable, right? Get them to know you. And so that's why I started out with a vulnerable story. You all want to be my friend. Not because I'm fantastic. I mean, I am. But you want to be my friend because I open myself up to you. Do that too when you're in these interviews. And then if they say no, it wasn't the place for you anyway, right? So
I'm going to claim my place as your friend, okay? Like I'm
yes, Lola, and we're going to make t-shirts, right? Great.
I have t-shirts. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I got a heat press right here.
But I love what you said about making a personal connection, because it is that. It is about, you know, what do you have that might help you in this other industry or switch that you want to do. I've switched discipline and industry a couple of times in my career. And one technical thing I would add to that is you make assumptions about what is needed in an industry when you're not in that industry, right? So you look at somebody, you may look at any of us and be like, oh, they work at these companies, and, you know, I'm going to need to go and study and get like these mountain of qualifications because they will have these qualifications. Our journeys are actually quite unique. Maybe you don't need the qualifications. You know, there was one time in my career where I was debating doing an MBA, and I went to speak to a connection who had a friend who was a CEO at a company, and he was like, you don't need an MBA. And I'm like, but everyone with this job looks like they have an MBA. He was like, here, let me give you the recipe, right? And he sat me down and he schooled me. And so that's my advice, is find someone who's in that industry, find someone who might be doing that job. Have a few conversations with different people about how they got to where you want to get to, so that you're actually building a baseline that's based on reality, not your own assumptions. And then start making those connections and keep making those connections. Don't be worried about starting back at base. All right. But, you know, we talked about this assumption that your career is like a staircase that goes up, but it actually goes up and down. If you're switching industry, sometimes you're going to have to start at the bottom. But if you've got all of this other experience and you bring, you know, leadership, or you bring, you know, the ability to connect people, or the ability to grow teams, or you're a really great facilitator, or you're just somebody who learns really quickly, there is no specific time limit on how quickly you can grow in your career, right? So I don't think any of us works in a company that says you must have done 22 years of X before you can become Y. It's actually, you know, that used to be the case. But I think almost all businesses are way more progressive. It's more competitive for them to find the best talent. So you can shine and rise in any industry based on your own pace. And so never be afraid about going backwards to go forward. Never be afraid about going sideways to go forward. But always make sure that you're challenging your assumptions, right? Get the information that is actually more useful about what people are doing, and then start connecting with people as you're doing that. You know, the cold outreach on LinkedIn is hard because there might be silence. I apologize in advance to a lot of people. My inbox is always in deficit. I do respond, but it just takes a while. But just message people, connect, drop them a DM on Twitter, and, you know, reach out, respond, like try and make that personal connection to have a conversation that then enables you to build a baseline that makes sense.
Yes, I agree with both of you. I believe maybe it's going to sound something like a phrase you find in the back of a car. Like, we have to make mistakes to find what we really want to, or what make us us. To continue, the idea of finding a mentor is important, but not everyone has one. Do you have anyone who inspired, mentor, coach, or support you along the way? How do you find or connect with these people so important to us? Maybe Colleen could start.
Yeah. So I've had like several people that I consider to be mentors throughout the years. It's probably very rare to find a single person who can advise you on everything you need covered from the start of your career. So I kind of broke my like mentorship into themes. So when you're first starting out, like I just told you guys, I had that very vulnerable story at the start of my career, where I didn't kind of know how to handle that situation. Though I really wish I'd had like a connection close enough at my job at that point to reach out to, because I know they would have steered me in the right direction, like going to HR. I didn't feel close or comfortable being like vulnerable with my coworkers at that point. And so really early on, before you make those work connections, you should probably rely on your friends and family who, I mean, I guess didn't really give me the right advice. They didn't send me to HR, but they did at least give me the tools to kind of like the interpersonal skills to tell that person to leave me alone, which for me was such a huge step at that point in time. So you need your friends and family outside of work who are familiar maybe with working in tech or just a corporate environment who can advise you on those aspects. And then I started at my job and I like was learning all of these new technical skills. I didn't know how to do anything. So I got technical mentors. For me, those were two guys on my team who were super knowledgeable about the stuff I was doing, but also friendly with me. They made me feel really comfortable asking them questions, and they knew a lot about the stuff I needed to know. And the two technical mentors that I started working with when I started at FactSet are still like two very close friends of mine. One actually works on my team, works for me now. And the other one has moved on to another company, but I stay really like in close contact with him because, once you build a connection, it's really important not to lose it. Then there's mentors who do career progression, right? For me, this was one of my bosses early on who looked for opportunities for me. He was really good at recognizing my strengths and pushing me out of my comfort zone to go for whatever next role or opportunity that suited my skills. I wouldn't say I'm not an ambitious person, but I've never felt qualified for anything. Like that's just a major weakness that I've always had. And having someone who was behind me constantly shoving me into these opportunities that I would have otherwise let me pass by, like I can't speak enough to how important that was for me to have. So very lucky that it was, my manager at the time, but find someone who will kind of push you ahead. And then this might also be the most important one, but having a support system. For me, it's like my group of friends at work. They'll like proofread my emails. I had a friend who works with me last night going through what I was going to say for this panel to make sure it was relevant. It's really helpful. And then, I also have friends where if I think someone's being mean to me at work, I'm like, hey, read what this person said to me. And they're like, no, I think you're misunderstanding it. Or they're like, no, that guy's a jerk. Like, fight him. But it's really important to have like those people in your corner at work who can kind of weigh in. They understand, the company culture, but they also understand you and they're your friends, and they'll offer support and advice and just like small things and big things. And you can really open up and ask like big and small questions to them.
Yeah, I believe it's important to know that we don't necessarily need one mentor as movies or books makes us feel, but as several. How about Kate? What could you say about it?
When I started out there, I didn't have a lot of women in my field to look up to. So, it was, and then it was hard to find people who looked like me. There was no one, right, who looked like me. Then digital platforms like LinkedIn didn't exist. So I think now taking advantage of those platforms, Lola mentioned it. There are three girl bosses on this call. You all should be connecting with all three of us in LinkedIn. If you don't, it's a missed opportunity. Whenever you meet someone, come across them, hear them speak, hey, loved what you said, put something. Kay, you heard you loved making t-shirts, because those personal connections, that's how you're going to find women, find other guys, whoever, who are going to help you in your journey, right? As you do go up, but, through the valleys. Finding that common interest is something I think that will be helpful. For me, where I am in my career, the current job that I got, the way that I got it was helping my current manager now, the vice president of database. She was new into the role. And so I said, hey, you need me to help you. I put 15 minutes on her calendar. I knew she wasn't going to give me 30. And I just asked for a job. And then because, it's like, I look up to you. I think that you're fantastic. You've been in this industry 30 years and you've climbed all the way up the corporate ladder. And then I came in and I did just that. So she connected me, she helped me, but then what I did was then help her to be successful. So the mentor relationship became a really nice symbiotic one where we were helping each other. But then as opportunities presented themselves, she gave them to me because she knew that I was going to give back. So yes, look for mentors. And as you work on these relationships, get to know them, see what things that you can do to help them, right, without them asking, or that don't actually benefit you. And then you get this really nice match, right, between the two, and it'll help.
I think yes to everything you've both said. I want to briefly touch on two things. One, Kay, you mentioned that kind of mutual mentoring. My longest standing mentor is somebody that I have mutually mentored. So he is an amazing individual around career development, leadership, and speaking. He does presentation coaching and, has this amazing voice. I have cross-mentored him on tech. So our relationship has been built on the fact that he's given me confidence to step into my own voice. And then I've given him the intel on what this industry and the technology is doing. And so that has been mutual. I think the other thing to bear in mind when you want to look for a mentor is, like with social media now, you can have a lot of passive mentoring. So you can follow people on LinkedIn or online who give advice for free in a very open and transparent way. But to call someone a mentor, you do want to connect and make sure that they even realize they're mentoring you, right? So you want to say, hey, I have heard, maybe it's a conversation initially, right? You just chat to them because you like their experience. And then you have to be clear, I really love how you have done X, and I would love to maybe spend a few sessions talking with you as I work through this, because that particular thing there is inspiring to me. And I think as somebody who mentors, it is always way more powerful for me when I'm aware of what a mentee needs from me. And I can actually focus on that with them over a period of time, as opposed to a general sense of, oh, you're so amazing, can you mentor me, in a very broad way. Yes, that's nice, but I think the most effective mentoring you get, especially as you accumulate people who help you focus on different parts of your development, is to be really clear on what you're getting out of a particular point in time. And then they will lean on that. They will give you as much as they can of that part of them. So there's a technical thing about making sure that you've got that baseline of how you're learning from someone.
Thank you. And the last question, what concrete advice do you have for young women today starting their career? If they do one thing today, what do you recommend? Maybe we can start with Kay.
So surprise, surprise, I'm going to say be your authentic self. Each of you ladies who are watching, you are interesting, you are unique, right? There's no one like you, and you're fantastic. So, I don't want you to just say that about yourself. I want you to believe it, right? I want you to breathe it. Unlike my mentoring Fridays, when, I've got a young lady and she's not feeling good, I make them do this. Stand in your Wonder Woman stance. And I know that we can't say bad words, so I'm not going to say bad words on here, but I say, I want you to say it. I'm a bad beep. And you're like, no, I don't want to. No, you've got to say it. You've got to be able to define what makes you unique. Use it to your advantage. Yes, I'm a senior director. I'm in technology, but I'm also a hip hop instructor, right? Bet you couldn't guess that. And it is what makes me unique. So I don't hide the fact that, like, you guys can see that picture right there? That's Beyonce from Homecoming. She's my best friend in my head. She doesn't know me, but I love her. And like, we talk in my head. So I didn't hide that from Oracle. And actually last night, Oracle released a commercial that blended my hip hop dancing and machine learning on Oracle. And I'm going to put it in the chat. I need all of you guys to go to it so I can have lots of views, right? So they can continue to put female faces in male spaces. But what I want you not to do is don't second guess yourself, right? Lola said it. She said, you don't have to have the macho energy. Bring your energy. Don't second guess. Be yourself, because everyone else is taken. Oh, let me put the commercial in.
Thank you. Lola, what do you have to say?
Well, it's a great segue. So be your authentic self. I would say the career advice I have is you're going to be working for a long time. Ignore what happened with our parents and grandparents, those who were fortunate enough to retire at like 60. We're all going to be working for a while. So you should follow your passion, right? You may not know what your passions are at this point. You may not realize that there's a tiny, tiny niche in machine learning or like design or art or, architecture or whatever industry. There might be this space that you don't even realize exists. But as you navigate your career, as long as you're always taking your next step based on what gives you that energy, what fuels you, what makes you, think about that dry, maybe even wet, cold day in like a month like February or November, depending on which side of the world that you're on, like the coldest, grayest day where you do not want to get out of bed. Find yourself doing a job that makes you want to get out of bed on that day, right? So that day is that the worst day of the year when you really want a duvet day, but you want a job that makes you not even care about staying in bed. Like you want to get up and you want to get at it. So every time you navigate towards that, I guarantee the promotions will come, the money will come, your life will feel more fulfilling. Every time you start working in I need the money, so I'm just going to do this, but your energy doesn't get uplifted by that work, you may find yourself stagnating or even stepping back. So that's my advice. Follow your passion and try and be true to what gives you energy.
Thank you. And last but not least, Colleen.
Yeah, I think I spent like so much time early in my career trying to blend in and trying to not get noticed and trying to make everyone feel like I belonged. And a little bit with like looking back with hindsight, I think I was projecting a lot of my own insecurities onto my coworkers. So my advice probably aligns with Kay, which is like, be yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself. I hid so many like fun facts about myself because I didn't want people to think, I have horses, right? And I have a lot of odd hobbies. I really like animals. And I was like, I don't want people to think I'm like a weird horse girl. So I just won't tell anyone about it. But really, it's an interesting, fun fact about myself. And I have so many weird stories from like being up feeding my horses and seeing like a weird little deer running through my yard. So being yourself and being comfortable to share that, it gets you so far. It helps you make the connections, which I think we've all said are very important. Then when you make the connections, you're more comfortable asking the questions. So be yourself. Like Kay said, be your authentic self. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there because honestly, you're probably a much harsher critic of yourself than any of your peers ever will be.
Thank you, all of you. Inspirational conversation. I really like it. And
Catalina,
now,
I have to
Rebecca.
say, for you to be 20 and moderating a panel of professionals, you did a fantastic job. You are inspiring in and of yourself. It takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing, and we're noticing.
I was very nervous. I wake up at 6 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. So thank you. I'm very inspirational. Thank you.
Wow. I don't know about all of you, but that was amazing. Thank you so much, Catalina. Thank you to Kay, Lola, Colleen. I think we're all walking away from this feeling a little like we can do anything right now. And you all are a shining inspiration. Something that really impacted me about this high-powered group of girl bosses is how all of them were directionless a little bit at the beginning of their career before they found their groove in their careers. All of them have faced setbacks and challenges. All of them have learned from mistakes. I want to encourage each and every one of you to continue to really explore, dream big, be open to new or unexpected experiences, continue to learn, continue to do things like Technovation that really give you that special sauce. If you're interested in learning more, we'll put their social channels in the chat one more time. And be sure to check out our next awesome activity right here on stage one, which is our junior finalist team pitches that are coming up in 1 minute. Enjoy the rest of your World Summit, and thank you again all for joining.